it's cooled by ammonia. And their job is to make sure that there are no leaks or anything like that, because that would be deadly to the astronauts, of course. If we go to the left of that, on the other side, you're going to see Spartan. Now, we don't really have a good view of any solar panels, but that's who is in charge of the solar panels. Now, if you look at the orbital tracking map, right below, you're going to see those two images of the solar panels, and that just shows you when they're lit like that, that they're pointed towards the sun. And they're in charge of moving those solar panels, making sure that the station is getting all the energy it can from the sun, because when it goes back into darkness, they're going to use that power to power station. Next to them, you see ADCO. Now, that's the Attitude Determination Officer, and if you look at his little call sign right there, you're going to see a Louisville Slugger baseball bat. That's because they're the attitude adjusters. Yes. They're in charge of a lot of things, and one of the things that they're mainly in charge of is moving the station up, down, left, right, if there's any orbital debris coming towards the station. Now, next to them, they work in tandem with TOPO. TOPO works very closely with NORAD. You're going to notice there's no one sitting at TOPO today. That means there's no orbital debris coming towards the station. If ADCO comes in and sees somebody sitting at TOPO, they know they're going to have to move the station that day. Now, they're not going to move it miles and miles. Sometimes it's just a couple feet, left, right, down, whatever. But there's 300,000 pieces of orbital debris up there, 300,000 to 400,000 roughly, but they only can really track about 40,000 pieces, and that would be the size of a softball or larger. Now, the pieces they're really worried about are the pieces like a paint fleck, a paint fleck, or like a piece of sand, because they're traveling at 17,500 miles as well. So that could do a lot of damage to the station. Of course, micrometeorites do hit station, but thankfully we've never had anything happen. Now, of course, I think they said 4 times since it's been up there for 18 years, they've actually had to put the astronauts inside of the Soyuz capsules and get them ready to depart, just in case they were hit by something very large. Yeah, but it's only 4 times in 18 years, and there's that much up there. That's pretty good. Now, if you go one back, you're going to see Robo. Of course, today there's no one sitting there because, well, they're not using the robotic arm. However, earlier this morning, about 3:30 this morning, they probably did have somebody sitting there, because they took a supply vessel, a Dragon vessel, and actually detached it from station, and it's actually coming back to Earth right now. So they did that about 3 o'clock in the morning. So we would have had somebody sitting there, because Peggy Whitson and Jack Fisher actually used that Canada arm to remove it. Next, you see Cronus. Cronus is the one giving us all these images that you see today, and we're actually going to start to be able to see a solar panel in that large image. Now, you are also at the bottom left, you're seeing an image that looks like something out of a science fiction movie. That is not the color of the Earth. That is pink because that camera was pointed at the sun too long, and it actually damaged the optics. But a spacewalk is very dangerous. Of course, remember we have 300,000 pieces of orbital debris out there, and you don't want to send someone out to do a spacewalk to change it out of camera if we still can see what's going on. So in the future, I'm sure they will, but right now that camera still gives good images that they can use. So we're not going to change that out anytime soon. Now, VVO, there's no one sitting at VVO today because we don't have a visiting vehicle attached to the International Space Station. No, one of those crew vessels. We will have a crew vessel coming in probably 2 weeks to the International Space Station, bringing up 3 crew members. So somebody will definitely be sitting there. And they're in charge of that visiting vehicle, just making sure that everything is going right with that vehicle when it gets docked to the station. Flight director right here, literally the most important person in this room. Whoever's sitting at that console is in charge of 3 things: the safety of the crew, the safety of the vessel, and the mission. So they have a lot on their shoulders. If there's something that goes wrong, they are the final say in how to fix it. If the President of the United States were to walk through that door and say, "I want you to do this," the person sitting there could say, "With all due respect, Mr. President, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. They could also say, please hold the president outside the room. So pretty much the only person in the room, or in the United States, except the president's wife, that can say no to him. That's pretty much how that works. Next to them, to the right, is Capcom. Capcom, of course, is not here because, well, they're getting ready to go to sleep in about an hour. The astronauts are. An hour and 36 minutes. So Capcom is going to be either an engineer that knows the language of the astronauts, or an astronaut themselves, or an astronaut trainer. Now, Capcom is the only people that would talk to who's on the station, the astronauts on station, and they relay the information. Now, what's amazing about them is they can take a huge paragraph and bring it down to 2-3 sentences because they use a lot of acronyms. Just like all these words that you see here are acronyms. That's what they use to talk to the astronauts. So they get a lot of stuff done really rapidly. Also, onboard stowage officer, what they're going to do is they're going to make the list, the grocery list pretty much, for the International Space Station. And they're also in charge of a lot of the mechanical things that go on station. Back here you have surgeon and BME. Of course, there's no one sitting there today. The astronauts are about to go to sleep. If the astronauts, we don't do surgery on the International Space Station. I've heard a lot of times people say, oh yeah, well, there's been an appendectomy up there. No, that would just be horribly messy. What they do is if there's, they can call in, the astronauts can call in anytime and say, yeah, I need to talk to a surgeon, or, and they find out their symptoms. And if the surgeon deems it super important to get them home, like it could be life-threatening, if you three go up together and you get sick, all three of you are coming home together. You can't just send one home because we can't put 5 people in a Soyuz. We can only put 3 at a time. So to have 2 Soyuz up there, you gotta have the whole crew come home. It'll take you about 2 hours to get home, and then they can give you medical attention. So that's what happens there. They're also in charge of making sure of the mental health of the astronauts. If astronauts just want to talk because maybe they're missing home. Maybe they're just tired of being up there on the station. Maybe they're tired of hearing the drone of the station because it does have just a hum all the time. They can kind of talk them off the ledge, so to speak, and kind of maybe they get an extra call home and talk to their family or something. Maybe they just tell them a couple of jokes. EVA, very important when we have a spacewalk. Of course, there's no one there because we're not doing a spacewalk anytime soon. That stands for extravehicular activity or spacewalk. Now, the next one I want to say is FOD, but it's turned away from me. I believe it's FOD. That's Flight Operations Director. That's going to be a person that would sit there, is going to be someone that oversees the room. If the president called, they're going to be the one talking to the president because they don't want to bother flight director with that call. But they're going to be making sure that, that the flight director gets everything they need in their power to make everything run smoothly. Then next to that, I believe, is ICE. Anytime we have a visiting vehicle attached to the International Space Station, the person that's going to be sitting there is in charge of making sure that that vehicle isn't doing any harm to the International Space Station. So they're in charge of making sure that everything runs smoothly for station while that vehicle is there. So if there's something that, maybe there's an issue with the visiting vehicle that could harm station, ISC is going to be the one that's in charge of that. So that's pretty much the room in a nutshell. The folks that are in here are going to be Orbit 2. There should be a third group coming in, maybe by the time we leave the room. Each place usually has 2 chairs sitting there. And the reason being is they work an 8-hour orbit or shift. It's NASA, so it's called an orbit. And then another person's going to come in, sit down beside them, and they're going to tell them what to expect, what's happened during the day. That way you're not just, plop down in your chair and the other person goes, okay, I'm leaving for the day, without saying, okay, oh, by the way, this happened. So it just gets that person in the right mindset for their orbit. And these folks have trained in a back room for many years, 3 to 4 years. They are the best of the best. They were chosen to come up here. The flight director is, that person has to be chosen by all the flight directors that are active. So everyone has to say yes, and it's not okay, well, you know, one said no. If one says no, you're not a flight director. So everyone has to agree. These are very important positions, and most of these positions are invited in by the flight director. Now you have another room that's probably not being used today because it is pretty much a holiday. It's one floor, well, yeah, it's kind of a half a floor below us. It is White Thicker, or White Flight Control Room, and that's where they do a lot of the sims for the new people that are coming in. It looks just like this room, absolutely just like this room. That's where they do all the sims. And there's you know, some support rooms that literally are trying to make those people cry and get as good as these folks, so they can come in this room as well. So yeah, we're actually in daylight now, so you get a